Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our last webinar for a little while. Hopefully you've been watching these webinars over the 2021 and before that even more. We seem to have had a very long stretch of these webinars this time, and we know you get some real value of them. But for some of you, this will be your first webinar ever. So the aim of these webinars is to support policing in adopting the 365 environment that we're rolling out across Microsoft. And in a moment, we're going to be joined by Nick Saunders from Microsoft, and Alice will be in the background answering some questions as well from Microsoft. And it's actually Alice's last session with us as well before she heads back to university. We're going to look at learning pathways today, which might sound a little bit, what's that all about, and is it all about L&D? But it's actually one of the built-in functionalities of the 365 space, and it's basically your learning and help center for the 365 suite that you can actually install locally. And those of you who've been visiting the Enabling Centre may have actually come across some of this before in terms of the learning pathways, as we have them built into our Enabling Centre, where they're under the Productivity Tools tab, and you can see all the different bits of the learning pathways. And Nick will go through this for you in a few minutes time, but it is all there as part of the Enabling Centre. And part of our aim today is for you to encourage you to start building your own Enabling Centre in Force, because you've got the capability. It's all included in what we're doing here to move things across. As normal, we're recording this webinar. And slightly not normal is this webinar will probably be becoming part of the solutions catalogue in the next couple of weeks, where we actually upload the solution of learning pathways into the solutions catalogue. So again, it's all up there ready for you to download and take forward as you move forward. As normal, put questions into the chat and we'll answer them throughout, and a few minutes at the end of the session. We aim to have you away by past as normal before we come back. Please hang with us till the end of the webinar. We'll give you some details of what we're going to be doing over the summer and what we're planning to come back with as we move forward. And again, I always ask for this, and we do get responses. Normally, by the time I finish this webinar, I've got an email from somebody who says, we've got something we'd like to share. So please do email nepinfo@transformation.police.uk if you've got some stories to talk about and how you've been using some of the content from the webinars and from the NEP to move things forward. Now, one of the key benefits of the NEP is, of course, that you've always got the latest modern tools available to you. As an update comes available from Microsoft, it comes available to our officers. So how do we keep everybody up to date with the latest information about how the tools work? And for some people, these new tools such as Planner, Sway, etc. are brand new and never been used before. So how do we train everybody up? Well, this is where learning pathways can really come in here. And the beauty of learning pathways is the content gets updated as the products get updated. And Nick will take us through that as we move forward. Just one more reference to the Enabling Centre before I bring Nick in is we're just in final testing at the moment of a new solution that will allow us to give more guests access to the solutions catalogue, the Enabling Centre, and move things forward. As soon as we've got communications available to show how you can get involved in that, we will push them out over the summer, but please do keep an eye on that as we move forward. So let's get into the subject today. So Nick, what are learning pathways and why are they valuable to us?
That's a really good question. Thank you, David. So Learning Pathways is a template. It's a Teams template. And as you sort of evolve in your digital transformation, you'll see that we've got quite a few Teams templates available. Now, this particular Teams template, Learning Pathways, is actually based on SharePoint Online. And what we've done here at Microsoft is created a template for you that has all of our learning content for M365. And the beauty of this is once you've actually installed it into your tenant, it actually looks at office.com for any updates. So if we want to make, or we have made loads of updates, loads of functionality updates, as you know, in our evergreen environment, when those updates are actually published within office.com, you actually see them within your tenant within Learning Pathways. So let me hop over to my shared screen and I'll show you what it looks like and how you can run this within your force. Okay, so you'll see Learning Pathways here. Learning Pathways, as I said, is a SharePoint site. And what we've done, we've installed this site into your tenant so you can manage this content yourself. And what we've done here, we've actually pinned it in Teams. And the reason why we've pinned it in Teams is that we've found with our customers that we found it really, really successful to have certain really important applications pinned in our Teams environment, because it allows your users to stay in Teams to be able to find the content. So we can just click on Learning Pathways and it opens up our little interface here as that end user. And that end user can click on these web parts to find out information about M365s. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey of some of the information that's here out of that box, what you get within your licensing already. There's nothing that you have to pay extra for here. Also, I'll show you today how your SharePoint administrator, so it doesn't need to be a global administrator or an IT administrator, just a SharePoint owner. So that could be somebody in your L&D area or maybe your transformation team, and how they can actually amend this content and how you can have a look at the analytics in the background to see how successful this learning portal is for you. So if I just click on the first tile here, this is about starting the 6 simple steps. So it's really quite easy to navigate as most of the M365 tools are. And it's just a case of clicking on a tile that is of interest to you. And you can see here there's some bite-sized training, a small video that normally is no more than maybe a minute and 20 seconds, and some text. You can use these little drop-down boxes to get to more content, maybe how to share and collaborate if you're very new to M365. You can scroll down and see what we have to say about this product. Now, going back into those web parts here, some of the ones that are really super interesting, this one here is where really all the content lies for M365. So let me just take you to this web part here. You can see all of the M365 tools are listed. So anything from Teams, which we always love to talk about because it is our favourite, most interesting application because it's our hub to get things done, as well as maybe some of the Excel and Word functionality that you're probably very used to, but it does give you the latest sort of bite-sized training. And you can see up here, if you're, if you're familiar with, we are all familiar with remote working nowadays, maybe hybrid working. So let me just take you on a little bit of a journey for something like Teams. So if you are quite new to Teams, or even if you've been using it for some time, there's always something new to learn in our new sort of evergreen environment. So say, for example, if you come here, you could click on this little bite-sized training about collaboration in Teams and channels. And you can see the information here. So it's really quite sort of snippets of information, so snippets of bite-sized training. If I just go back to, let me go back here, back to these web parts. Now you may find in your transformation that you may not want to actually have all this content available to your users. I know working with some forces, they've made a decision about not enabling all apps all at the same time. And I know for one of them in particular, Sway always seems to be one of those last applications that you enable. So say, for example, if you're a force that you don't want Sway to be enabled here, because maybe you don't want those questions to be asked to that transformation team about, okay, you've got Sway here and it sounds really great, but actually, you know, how do I get it onto my laptop? Then as the administrator of this site, you can actually disable some of this functionality. So let me just show you how to do that. If I just go back to my main page and go back into that, main page. I've got this little blue bar here, and I get this blue bar here because I'm actually the SharePoint owner of this site. Okay, and if I can click on that one, it takes me to a little bit of a back end, a little bit of an area here as administrator. There's things I can do. It gives me quite a bit of information here about how to drive adoption within your force. So sort of proven bits of information that we've discovered and worked with multiple, as you can imagine, thousands and thousands of customers over the time of having M365. And you can see here that there's some bite-sized information for those transformation teams as well. And what you can do in here is actually you can click on the little gear symbol. Now that gear symbol actually takes you to a web part. And this is a Learning Pathways web part. Let me just show you because it looks a little bit different than what you may be familiar with within SharePoint. You can see these little eye symbols. So this is an interface that we've created to make life a little bit easier for you. So say, for example, we were talking about Sway just now. Maybe your force doesn't want Sway enabled within this learning package because you haven't got it enabled. So what you can do is, if I just change to technology, just because it's a little bit easier to see all the technologies within M365. And if I click on something like Sway, go back up to the screen. Oh, there we go. Sticky mouse today. It's very hot. There you go. I can see my eye symbol for Sway. And if I click on that eye symbol, it basically disables that web part. So if I just go back to Learning Pathways and show you what I actually mean there. Remember earlier on when we went into this web part for showing your users about all that great content for 365. If I go back into here and I see all my icons, now you can see Sway here because I haven't refreshed my screen. So let me just refresh the actual learning pathways a second. Just take 10 seconds or so. Little scrolling circle. I promise it will work. What you will find here is that web part will be disabled, which means that your users won't be able to actually see that piece of content anymore. So if I just go back to 365 training, and you can do this for any of these web parts at all. You can disable any of them. You can see it's disappeared here. Okay, so as you can see just then, we could quite easily configure this Learning Pathways application to have functionality, some of that learning content off and on. So it's really quite simple to use. Now, the other thing that we have discovered is that it's quite nice for our administrators to be able to maybe potentially change some of this content on the front page. And that's really easily done because it's using SharePoint Online. And the way that we can do that is actually to drop into SharePoint. So if I click on, actually if I come back into here, we talked about this little interface. If I actually click on the home page here, it actually takes me to a very familiar page. We were here just now, weren't we, in Teams? But here we're actually in SharePoint, which allows us to have a little bit more functionality. And what we have found with one of our forces that have actually have enabled this, they have configured it a little bit differently. So they've added their own content. And the way that they do that is actually click on the edit button here within SharePoint Online. Okay, which takes you to the editable screen. You can see here that I've got some functionality. I can make some changes. Maybe I don't want these 5 boxes of this web content. Maybe I might want to change it to something a little bit different. Now, what we do say with Learning Pathways is try not to over configure it. Okay, it's out the box. We automatically update the content for you. You don't really have to do anything. You could literally use this out the box, but you can configure it if you want. So what we have is this 20-80 rule. 80% leave it as it is, 20%, yeah, absolutely. If you want to add your own content, then add your own content, but try not to muck about with it too much because you have then got the overhead of actually having to update this content. But what I have seen is potentially maybe you might want to add some more information. So if I'm just going to move down here to this particular web part here, I'm going to edit the section. I'm going to make it 2-column. You can see here it's just split this piece of content into 2, and I may want to add some content. There may be, we've been working, you've been working with Microsoft, and Microsoft have been doing some Art of the Possible sessions with you, and maybe there's a stream video or something that you want to add. So I'm just going to add a stream video into here just to show you how straightforward this is. It is a little single video, and if by magic I've got the, let me just do share, just make sure I've got the right shared link. I'm just going to copy that link back into Learning Pathways here. My fault, didn't do it. There we go. There we go. I'm just going to show you how easy it is to add that stream video into that SharePoint page. Now, what I might do at the top of here is just maybe put a little bit of a title page. Oh, let's play that there. Say, oops, always typos. Here's a great video.
So this is ideal if you want to add in content such as perhaps one of these webinars where you want to bring in a webinar, an EP,
absolutely,
to your stream channel so you can keep it on, or just embed in the code from the YouTube channel from the MEPs there. Or if you want to run to the enabling center and pull up some of the ways of working that's been developed for policing and put that next to a piece of content, again, that's all part of the functionality that's there.
Yeah, absolutely. And because this is SharePoint Online, we have lots and lots of different web parts. So just think of a web part as a part of an application that's actually built for you. So it's something that you can very easily add an image. It gives you the ability to add a URL for a stream, piece of stream content. You can add part of a Yammer site. Maybe you've got an internal Yammer site that talks about your transformation or learning in 365. You can add your web part for Yammer and it pops up on the page. But let me show you what this little web part here that I've just added. If I just publish. Okay, so I've just published that little stream video down the bottom. Now I'm back into Teams. I'm just going to refresh my page because I have made some changes. So pretty much dynamically, your users who click on Learning Pathways after your change will see that web part added and that content. So you can make dynamic changes very, very quickly. It's always a little bit slower than I talk. Come on.
There you go. And you can see here, the page has slightly changed. Here's a great video on Teams, and your users then can click on that little web part. Because it's integrated into SharePoint Online, it will actually show and play that video within this actual site here, rather than actually taking you to a separate tab. So all very easy to build content. And when we talk about this 80 to 20% rule, this is the 20%. This is the bits that you can add to complement what we've already given you out of the box. So going back to learning pathways on this site here, so there are other things that you can do. So we've talked about switching on and off content. We've talked about configuring your front page and maybe pages behind this content to be specific to your force. But there's other things you can do from that transformation L&D area, and that's all about your analytics. How many people are coming to this page? How many people are actually accessing it? What time of the day they're accessing it? Because all that information is essential for knowing the success of this learning. So what you can do, because this is SharePoint and this appears in any SharePoint site that you create, you've got this little gear symbol at the top. And when you click on that gear symbol, you can go down to site usage. And in site usage, come on, there you go. You'll find some graphs. This is completely out of the box. You could, if you wanted to, use something like Power BI to pull the information, that real granular information out of this SharePoint site. But out of the box, you get quite a few little graphs here. You can see the popular content, the number of site visits, the average time spent within this site. You can see here the pages that most people are accessing. This is a demo tenant, and it is only Megan that mainly uses learning pathways. That's the reason why the unique users here are very low. From here, you can see your success. If you are wanting to talk about, how to co-author in Teams, and maybe that's got a very low user hit, then actually you need to do something else about publishing information about it, talk about it within your Yammer community, talk about it within Teams. It could be an email, it could be, a webinar that you want to run. And you can see then the pages that are then starting to sort of link, increase, because people are going to that page to find out information about how to do something. You can see what types of devices people are using. Is it your, back office staff that are using this learning pathways? Is it actually, your frontline workers they're using on those Samsung devices or their personal mobile phones, whatever that setup is for your force? And you can see the time of day that your users are actually accessing this information. So there's lots of content, there's lots of configuration, and there's lots of information around finding out whether this is successful for your force and what you need to do to make it successful.
I've got a quick question for you, Nick. Is it possible to sort of, customize the name or anything like that at all for learning pathways?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question, and I have seen people change names. So learning pathways is what we've called it, but you can change when you actually pin this application in Teams. You do need your 365 administrator to download this template. Once it's downloaded, they can then give the permissions to change the content to anybody. As I said, it could be anybody within your transformation, L&D team, whoever has that SharePoint access rights to change and change these pages. But yeah, you can change the name of learning pathways quite straightforward. When that icon gets pinned and gets created, you can call it whatever you like. You can also put title page up here as well within learning pathways, and you can color scheme it to your force. You might want to put your own sort of badge on the site as well to make it a little bit personal to you.
And certainly what we did with the enabling center, we had it as a small tab as part of that, and people can navigate to it. So obviously this becomes searchable on the SharePoint site as well. So this can be this is almost giving you a whole branch of a SharePoint site for all officers and staff to be able to access without a great deal of effort to put the content together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked before, haven't we, David, about actually adding your intranet here. So if you have got an intranet today, whether it is on SharePoint on-premise or whether you've got an intention of moving it to SharePoint Online, once it is in SharePoint Online, it's very easy to create an icon in Teams to your intranet. I'm not quite sure if this one's broken or not. Have a quick look. And from here, it's again, we've got information from other customers and statistics around how successful getting those pages on your intranet and your learning pathways site, you get more hits to this site because people are only moving their mouse a couple of inches. It's very, you know, in front of them, that icon, rather than having to think of going to SharePoint. I need to open up Edge, I need to get to the intranet, I need to get to that page. You know, it's very easy to use pinned applications in Teams. And the learning pathways is just, you know, for myself, we've got the history of running transformations and that learning and adoption. This is absolutely essential because, one, it's readily available, it's already configured, it's out the box, it takes no time at all to get it up and running in your tenant. And you could, if you wanted to, just leave it as it is. You don't have to do all the other configuration, but you're welcome to. It's available to you if you wish.
Yeah, literally took me about 10 minutes to get this all up in a demo site that I got to. I was quite amazed how simple it is. But the beauty, of course, is that once the piece of content is there, if it needs to be updated because something's changed in Microsoft, it's changed for us. We don't need to go back and alter things. And I think, you know, forces should really have a look at that in terms of this has been user guides, help points, and then thinking about the change champions that you have in Force and empowering them to use this as part of their way of helping others, colleagues to pick up on it. So it is one of those almost self-service learning centres, help centres where you can pick up content. And again, if you do want to augment it with local content, there's the capability there for you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, you know, I've used this before, because even if you are very familiar with M365, I mean, personally, I always seem to forget how to do things in Excel. And one thing that I've learned how to do over the years is things like pivot tables, but I don't do them very often. And there's lots of content around here, not just around Teams and some of the new functionality that we see in M365, but even some of the basic tools around Word, Excel, PowerPoint that we've been all using for years and years. And, you know, there's something in here about pivot tables. Wow, I don't use them very often. I know they're amazing. I can come to learning pathways and give myself a little bit of a reminder, have how to do stuff that I know how to do, but maybe it's not sort of top of mind. It's just a bit of a refresher for me.
And certainly for my communications colleagues out there, one of the things you can do is take extracts from the Learning Centre, build them into something like a Sway or an email campaign. So if you are trying to drive up adoption of a particular function, you can drill down into elements of this and then communicate that out to encourage people to do it. And again, reduces that effort of having to create the content. But the reality is, you know, you're going to signpost people to traffic, to good content that works, it's been tested, and is there to help things forward. So don't think of it as just a website and that's it. It is content that can help drive adoption communications really, really powerfully.
And one of the sort of web parts here, the windows here, that is pretty essential for you to configure is the ask questions and get help. So out of the box, as you can imagine, it's not for your particular force. You can see the last time I updated this was North Hands. But yeah, it's important this page within that SharePoint, again, you edit it, you can then make some changes to this, how your users get support, whether it's a champion group, maybe it could be a little help bot that you've created within your Teams environment. It could be a Yammer site, it could be a help desk. So this page is quite essential to configure to make sure that they are routed to the right people, to that extra little bit of help.
We're not getting many questions through today, so we'll probably close at that. But again, I will remind colleagues that if you want to see this already and you already have access to the NEP tenant, go across to the enabling centre. It's there ready for you to use, and you can see what you can do with it. We've configured it in a certain way. You can configure it however you want to. And certainly if any forces are looking at this to help them support their adoption comms, please get in touch with myself. I do have some template sways where I've created there. You can use this sort of content to move things forward as we get going. Now, normally at this point of a webinar, I'm going, this is what we're going to be doing next week. But of course, we're not going to be here next week. But that doesn't mean we're going to go quiet. If you are subscribed to our emails and our social media, and I've just posted the links to our Twitter and LinkedIn accounts into the chat so you can access them, please do keep an eye out. We're going to get colleagues to replay some of the webinars we've done over this year already. And we know we get lots of hits of people replaying the webinars, and they're all available on the NEP website for you to access. So if ever you're thinking, I wish I knew something about this, please do go to the website where we're there to help. We will be back in September, but we are going to slightly tweak the format and the capabilities around this as we look at making them even more interactive. So we'll be looking at the new webinar functionality that's been dropped in at the moment and putting the policies up for that. So you'll be able to register and have perhaps more chat with us rather than just using chat. You'll be able to put your hand up and ask us questions. We'll look at different formats of webinars as we move forward and make them work. Also, we're going to be bringing in some of the content from the wider police digital service. As you know, the NEP is now under the umbrella of the PDS, the Police Digital Service. So we're going to be bringing in some of the content from people like the Video Enabled Policing and the Digital Case File teams, who again, the NEP are working really closely with to leverage what we've already got to be able to help. So later in the autumn, we will be bringing some of their content in as well. Remember, the recordings are there. Please do get in touch. We may be putting out some smaller videos over the summer as we move things forward, because there's so much going on. Things don't stand still in this space. And as we know, we've got more forces hitting full rollout and beginning their adoption journey every single day. I'd like to thank Alice, who's been with us today. We haven't got any more questions, who's going back to uni. Nick, again, as normal, fantastic webinar. Hope people get some real value out of this content. And if you have got any suggestions of things you want to cover, please get in touch with us on the email address nepinfo@transformation.police.uk. and Mike and I are planning actually this Friday the next set of webinars that we're going to be doing, and we've already got a number of forces identified who are going to be telling their stories. So thanks very much for attending today. Hope you enjoyed the session and get something out of it, and please let us know if you're adopting this, so we can give you some support and maybe get help from Nick and the team in configuring it how you want to. And remember, the content that's on the Enabling Centre you can borrow with pride. So if you want to link in the ways of working, it's all there available to be picked up. And again, if you need anything, Mike Howley-Freeman and myself are there to help you out. Hope you enjoyed the day.